this December 7th through 9th. Check out the EdUp Experience podcast live and in person in Doha, Qatar for the World Innovation Summit on Education. We will be documenting the ideas and innovations from today's most influential global education leaders. Check them out at wise-qatar.org and follow the EdUp Experience podcast for more information. Yay! Unmuddle. Have you heard of them yet? If you haven't, you got to check them out at unmuddle.com/colleges. They are disrupting the community college scene. Their course to jobs marketplace is a modern way for community colleges to compete with the big players. Check them out again at unmuddle.com/colleges. That's UNMUDL.com/colleges. Welcome back, everybody. This is the EdUp Experience podcast where we make education your business. Dr. Joe Salustio back with you again on another fantastic episode. I'll tell you that it's fantastic even before you listen to it, because not only do I have a first-time guest co-host that has been patiently waiting to co-host with me, and every time he tries, either I cancel or the guest has canceled a couple of times. I keep pushing him off. I think he thinks I'm trying to avoid him, but here he is anyway. I'll bring him on in a second. And then we have an amazing guest of a college that I'll yet to name because I don't want to bring him in inappropriately, but we have a lot of questions for him. He's been at the college for about 15 months, so we'll call him a COVID leader or transitioning a COVID leader, and we're going to talk all about what that looks like, which is insane. You got to be a little crazy to do that. So we'll find out his mental state currently. I want to remind everybody to head to edupexperience.com. I beg you, please give us a review. You can do it right on our website. It says reviews. You can just leave it there. 5 stars. If you leave anything less than 5 stars, I'll follow you on your IP address. I'll find you where you live. So go ahead and do 5 stars for us. Tell us what you think of this podcast. If you're a guest, tell us what your experience is like. If you're a listener, tell us what you think. Do I need more sound effects? Less? Is Elvin doing a good job? What do you think of our co-hosts? No pressure to my co-host today. You can always talk about that as well. Anyway, I'm going to go in and bring him in now. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is. Let me get some music right here. Steve Rice, a faculty member at Northwestern Michigan College. Steve, how are you?
I'm good, Joe. It's great to be with you today.
That was my broken bicycle.
Yep.
You know, kind of like imagine you coming in on a bike, swaying from side to side,
Well, I was thinking like a maiden voyage in a ship because we have so much water around us, but I get the bikes.
Maiden voyage on a ship. Let me see. Do I have anything? I don't think I have any kind of a blowhorn or anything like that. I've got a gong for your faculty mentorship. A gong. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for coming on. Are you excited to be here on the EdUp Experience co-hosting with me?
I am. It's all new space, and I love it. I've been following you guys for a year or so. You were introduced to me by a friend who said, you got to follow EdUp if you want to be interested in the changes coming in education. Have you heard of EdUp? And I was like, no, I didn't know anything about you guys. And since then, I have been a faithful listener. I really have loved.
You've now become my favorite person, and your friend, your favorite. Whoever your friend is, I got to meet him or her and find out how they heard about us. But I thank you so much, Steve. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because you've been very involved and we've been in touch, and I'm just like, you know what, come on, co-host with me. It'll be fun to absolutely grill with missile questions so hard that he's going to have trouble in answering them. We'll see. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wesley Lundburg. He's president of San Diego Miramar College. Wes, what's going on?
Hey, Joe. Hey, Steve. It's great to be here. What's going on? Lots of things. You mentioned COVID, and you're wanting to check on my mental well-being. I'm not sure that I'm the person to ask how my mental health is.
Maybe this should have been your music then.
I seem to be surviving anyway, so there you go. Yeah.
Well, we're honored that you would join us today. We've got a lot of questions for you, but I want you to kind of level set for us. Talk about San Diego Miramar College beyond the obvious that you're in San Diego. What type of college do you have for the general listener? What do you guys do, and how do you do it?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we're considered a medium-sized, which means bigger than 10,000 students, medium-sized comprehensive community college. We're set as you just noticed in San Diego on the north side. Folks usually associate us with the movie Top Gun because we're 1 mile from the Top Gun school at Miramar, MCAS Miramar. So we're big on some of our military program outreach. We have a lot of classes going on at the Miramar Air Station. We serve the city or township, if you will, of Mira Mesa and Scripps Ranch, which is located near Penasquitos and Poway for those who know, but kind of the north side of San Diego proper. And we are unusual in that as a comprehensive community college, our CTE, our technical and vocational type programming, is about half of what we do. So that's unusual. Normally it's the transfer programs outweigh the CTE type programs by a fair margin. And we're also very well known in the region for a number of things. Among them are the police academy. We run the regional police academy here. We have the fire academy, EMT, and search and rescue lifeguard school. We have an aviation program that runs airframe mechanic as well as the ground school for flight school for piloting. So those are some of the CTE programs that we have. We have a very large auto tech program, heavy equipment and diesel. So you can see that in addition to the transfer type programs, we have that. For those who see us, visually, we're a pretty striking campus. Of course, every president's going to say that about their campus, right?
Good city to start from. San Diego's kind of got it going on, you know.
Well, yeah, I like to think so. Anyway, so but we have better than 10 new buildings that have been built in the last 15 years. So it's a very truly striking campus. It's beautiful. Prior to that, we paid our dues. We lived in blue bungalows for 30 or 40 years, and so the time was coming. But it's and the campus has grown pretty significantly. We've been recognized by Georgetown University in a study they did as one of the 100 fastest growing community colleges. Of course, all of that is pre-pandemic. Pandemic knocked all of us back down a bit, so like everybody else, we're struggling with that a bit. But we are re-engaging students, and we're looking for ways to grow in the future and make sure that we're serving the community that we're here for through the learning process of the pandemic. Because I think we've all learned a lot about what's important in life as well as in our professions. But we've also learned a lot about how we do what we do and what's important there. So,
yeah, it's the truth, right? It's the great reset, the great reimagining of our lives and what they will look like in the future. And, you're seeing a lot of that play out in the Great Resignation. Everything's the great, by the way. If you haven't noticed, everything's called the great. If you put the great in front of it, you just automatically tie it to COVID somehow. You talked about re-engaging the students. Talk about that process. How is it going? What's the variability look like in the student response? Because, we've talked to a number of community college presidents, Wes, and a lot of them said, look, students have disappeared. Some have just completely disappeared. They've gone to work. They can't leave money on the table right now and enter the higher ed system again. There's a lack of trust or a question of safety. There's all these things happening in and around the student, family pressures, financial health, et cetera. What's it look like, the re-engagement effort?
Yeah, well, you're spot on, Joe. A lot of those things that you mentioned as pressures on students have always been there, but I think they've been exacerbated by the pandemic and really driven home the need to put food on the table for kids, to balance their busy schedules with multiple jobs in many cases. It's a real challenge. We just finished a district-wide. I should mention San Diego Miramar College is one of 4 colleges in the San Diego Community College District. But district-wide, we did a student survey, and it's interesting what's come out of that because, on the surface, you might say, well, look at this. About a third say that they would prefer their classes online, a third would prefer them face-to-face, and a third could go either way, which gives you no direction whatsoever. You can just pick which third you want, I guess, but
gives you one of 3 directions, I guess.
Yeah, exactly right. But when you dig into it a little bit further, you find, on the face value there, that's a huge increase in student interest in online classes. And you might think that students are looking to go online, maybe exclusively, but they're not. What they're looking for is more flexibility. That's really what they want. And they see online education, and they've learned through the pandemic that online education can increase their flexibility, but they still want that personal one-on-one or within a group face-to-face experience, and they'd certainly want the student life on campus. So they don't want to give up the campus. They don't want to give up the old bricks and mortar, but they do want more flexibility. So as I've been sifting my way through that student survey, which I have to say is just really full of surprises, things that you wouldn't have predicted, which really just fits what we're talking about now, which is the pandemic, and it's thrown us for a loop in so many ways. I think we've learned to be flexible and adaptable foremost. So, students are interested in flexibility for a lot of different reasons. They're finding that they need, well, let me just take one example. Students that are not that far away consider themselves place-bound in that, using mass transportation, or in an area like here where we do have some traffic jams and slowing down at rush hour, that if they do classes online, they can save one heck of a lot of time. So that's a different form of being place-bound, and I think as students discover that, they're really asking for more flexibility without giving up all those other things that they like, hanging out with their friends on campus and stuff like that.
Steve, I'll bring you in now and ask you a question, and then I'll have you turn it around and ask Wes the question. But your faculty, you're in Michigan, so you're a world away, or at least part of the world away from San Diego. Are you seeing the same kind of variability in what students are after and what they want right now?
I would say, yeah, we are, Joe. Or should I be the great Joe? I got to put a great in front of it, right?
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I was thinking the great Tom Cruise would be someone familiar with their campus, but I think flexibility is something that we're definitely seeing students calling and crying out for. Still face-to-face, at the end of the day, education seems to be a hands-on sport, but there's multiple ways to get to that spot. And I've seen some students really thrive in an online environment. I'm teaching in this semester, it's all online, but it's the first time I've ever done it, except for COVID. This one was optional. But during COVID, I had students perform better than I had ever seen students perform in a face-to-face environment. That was really an interesting upshot to kind of go. I was surprised that there were some students that just really thrived in that world. And then there's some that don't. So there's it's kind of like fishing. We're casting a net and we're trying to get a sense of who are all the different students that we're serving? What's the average age? How do we best serve them? If it's a continuing ed student, it's different than somebody who's coming out of high school. And how do we target them and focus on them and do so in a way that's consistent with our own mission? I know our college right now, we're just getting ready to wrap up a year-long strategic plan, and that's going to help launch us into the future. And don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but that's coming down the pike. A question I had for you, Wes, is what is the average age of your students at Miramar?
Well, it's quickly changing,
Yeah.
but it's in the mid-20s. But that's you have such a heavy number of students that are 18 to 24 that it kind of skews the numbers. The median would probably be 30, 31, 32.
Okay.
We serve a lot of veteran students, which I kind of alluded to earlier. And there's a lot of folks retooling, probably the same thing at your college, I would think.
Yeah.
Is it skewing? Let me ask, is it skewing older? Is that what you're saying? It's changing? You're saying it's kind of changing?
Yeah, it's moving. Yes, it's moving. I think we're seeing more and more older students. Some of that is the demographic. I think this is probably a national stat, but high school enrollments are declining as folks have less and less kids, I suppose. And if you look right down toward K, you have some spikes, but in general, we're going to have less and less of those high school graduates to draw on. So we focus more on the mid-range students, the older students, trying to engage them, recognizing that they're retraining and there's shifts in career, during your life. And one of the roles of a community college is to be there for them. I think, a couple decades ago, we weren't as good at recognizing that and being responsive. We were more reliant on being kind of the old junior college sort of model.
Are you seeing an increase, Wes, in like certificates, demand for certificates, those types of credentials, as opposed to an associate's degree, whether it's a transfer degree or a terminal associate's degree? I know at our school we use the language of ASA and AAS. The ASA is the transfer and the AAS is the 2-year associate's degree. But are you seeing kind of more of a increased demand for the certificates, whether it be badging, micro-credentials, that type of stuff?
I think there's a trend toward that in higher education in general. I'm not seeing a trend in that direction, but you got to keep in mind, I've been here for 15 months and this is a heavy certificate type college. So okay. I just by coming here have seen a huge increase in that, but I think that's where the industry is going. I've always been a proponent of modularized education, where we should be really focused on student outcomes and allowing students to stop in and stop out. I know this is not going to happen until way after my death and retirement, but that'll be the next great change, Joe. They're great.
They're great. Yeah. And you bring that up, and I want to zero in on that for a minute, because I don't think higher ed, you can't count COVID as a great change. It's only been a catalyst, but it really didn't facilitate innovation. I guess it did facilitate innovation, but it kind of pushed it along. It's not like everybody went, "Oh, I've got something new and I'm going to do it." It was because we had to do it, or maybe we had it already and we just improved upon it. But there hasn't been a model change in higher ed for a long time. I've advocated for my big idea, and it's not necessarily mine, but I think that higher ed could be modeled after like a hotel rewards program. That's what, you get points for successful completion. You can come back and you can redeem those points for continuing education, or maybe to reduce your price in the future. Because Miramar is so in the non-credit space and the credentialing space, there's been more innovation there than there has been in, let's say, the degree granting piece. How do you imagine what the future might look like? And of course, at the end of this episode, I'm going to really ask you what the future of higher ed looks like, just as a warning. But do you think there's a model change out there that's achievable?
I don't think we've found it yet, but I think so. I mean, I think both of you have kind of alluded to nothing's changed for so long. I think it's been well documented that it's really based on an industrial age model of an assembly line, and if you think of the Carnegie model, 3 credits for, average of 3 hours in class per week. And it makes all kinds of assumptions. My place in the classroom was as English faculty. And one thing I noticed was that students who were truly going to improve tended to have a decline in their performance toward the end of the semester, which if you're going to hold them to that old grading model would mean that their grade would go down rather than up. And I always had a safety net in place. If I see that you're making an attempt to change and you're experimenting to improve, your grade is not going to hurt. I'm going to protect you from that. So, be bold, make changes, do things that are risky. And that was kind of an early recognition in my career of the old model just doesn't work very well. It's a cookie cutter, it's an assembly line. We need to do something more like what you're talking about, but so much has to change before that happens. And that's why I made that kind of snarky remark about won't happen till after I'm dead, but it's really true. There's, we've got union environments that are concerned about compensation and how that's handled. And if you have students popping in and popping out, how do you do that? How do you build a relationship with a student to help them grow and learn if you only see them for a few weeks out of your semester? And do we even have semesters, or is it something different than that? Do we have learning environments and learning labs rather than traditional classrooms? As we move away from the sage on the stage and more toward the guide on the side model, what does that look like? So I don't think any of us here in our greatness, Joe, I don't think any of us
started something here that I feel like I'm going to get hung out to dry. I'm going to just say I applaud the effort to call me the great, but I think the majority of folks out there would give me this applause. It would just be that weak one right there, but go ahead.
I missed what you said. I'm sorry.
I said I wouldn't get a very big applause out there for anybody calling me great. So, what are you going to do?
Well, you've got an audience of 2 here that'll applaud you, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll stick with it. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things that I wrestle with, Wes, is, are we going to be in a model where it's lifelong learning, and literally lifelong learning, where there's this integration of work and learning that is just never separating? The idea that, when I went to college, I went to a 4-year college, got a degree, went out and got a job, worked for a while, went back, got a master's degree. It was kind of a old school. I call that old school. And now we're coming into something that's new school, but we don't know what it is yet. And I sense there's going to be an integration of work and learning, and just lifelong, redefining almost what lifelong learning looks like. I think it fits your modular idea. It fits stopping in, stopping out, stopping in, stopping out. The question, I guess, is what kind of a support structure do we need to put in place to facilitate that rather than frustrate it, to really give wings to it so that it can go and grow and result in an educational experience that really helps students to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my response to that, Steve, would be economics. It's how we're funded is going to drive things, and hopefully what society values will drive the way that legislators fund higher education, whether it's private or public. But nothing's going to change without that changing. And so right now we're funded based on what we here call FTES, the number of full-time students equivalency that we have.
Yep.
And there's a formula model for that. And that's what drives everything, and so and the number of students you have right there, it says it, full-time equivalency, which is based on 12 credits.
Yep.
And how many students, you take however many credits are taking, divide that by the number 12, and that gives you your number. Whether that's real bodies or not doesn't matter. That's how many credit hours you're driving. So we're paid almost by a product, which is considered time in a seat, which flies in the face of real education, which, that's why I support that modular idea, because then it's really based on learning like you're describing, lifelong learning. But the whole economic package has to change, and we have to stop looking at numbers of students in order to fund that kind of innovation and change.
Yeah.
I like by the way, I probably sound a lot better now than I did before, because I have a bad habit of not turning on my microphone, which I've just done. I've just turned it on. So it's not so great after all, but I did the economic, what'd you call it? The economic package has to change. I think that's well said. By the way, as we've been going on, I don't know if you guys have been hearing, I've been hitting these sound effect buttons, but because I don't have my mic on, they always cut off. Wes, so like my applause might have been like a half applause, and then it cuts off to quiet. It's supposed to sound a little bit like this when I introduce you. Let's see if it sounds a lot better now to you guys. How's this sound? That's how it's supposed to sound. But it's well documented that I have so many pieces of equipment and things I just forget sometimes. What are you going to do? But but that's part of what happens here. I have to go back and re-record things, but that's Elvin will give me a hard time. But I guess my point in all of this, besides turning on my microphone and that long explanation, is there is a lot that students have to deal with. You're talking about economic package. You're talking about life. For community college students, we've talked about this a lot. You're a fender bender away, a bill away from quitting school, because it's an insurmountable, it might be a $45 bill, but it seems like an insurmountable thing to overcome for students who are in a really touchy place. Talk about your wraparound services a little bit. How do you ensure that you're there when the students have that moment of, oh God, it's $45. I can't go to school anymore. I got to take a break, right? Because that happens all the time. And it happens in schools where there's a diversity of backgrounds and first-gen students, students of color, lower income students. And it's a very, very hard thing to deal with all the time because and I know it becomes justification for why I can't continue on with school. And it's this bill that just seems so hard at the time.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, I call it the camel's straw effect. where they put up with so much and they put so much energy into stuff. Something like a flat tire can be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and suddenly they think they might even break down in tears on the side of the road and say, I just can't do this anymore, and so we do have a lot of supports in places. I think every community college does. The trick is students knowing about them. We have emergency funding available that can help students in those kinds of situations. And I've been at 5 different institutions across the US and they all had this. So I'm going to guess, Steve, your institution has that as well. And those are $500,000 emergency funding pieces, many of which don't have to be paid back. It's not necessarily a loan, it's a donation. So there's a lot of that kind of support. We have mental health counseling. We have, that can help get students in touch with any community type resource, or we can provide it in-house. We have childcare. We have, that are based off of child development programs. There's a lot of resources for students. And then there's food distribution. We can even help with housing needs. We don't have housing, but we are in touch with a lot of organizations that we can get students in touch with.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Diaz, interim president of Gateway Community College in Phoenix, Arizona. Gateway is a proud founding college partner of Unmuddle. We joined Unmuddle to reach a new market of students, the working learners. Unmuddle provides a needed mechanism for these students to work and learn simultaneously, providing a valuable return on their investment. Unmuddle elevates Gateway's non-credit training opportunities to a national level, scaling in a way that is difficult for individual community colleges to do on their own. Unmuddle also provides a unique opportunity for colleges to feasibility test new potential certificate and degree programs. The higher education landscape is crowded, but the value of community colleges is unmatched. Unmuddle will take us to new heights, and we're excited for the journey.
Yeah, we one of the things I noticed on your website, Wes, is your Miramar Dreamers.
Yeah. And
I thought that was kind of a cool, I love the butterfly as your
nice.
icon logo on that. And I thought it'd be, I'd like to learn a little more about that because that came across as something unique. We actually have a Miramar Dreamers. One of the things I've noticed, especially your first generation student, they come in with the mindset, like, I probably don't have what it takes to do well in college. And so when that car breaks down, it's not always, it's just money. That tape begins to play. See, you're not supposed to be there. You don't have what it takes. And that's a huge opportunity, I think, for us to help them understand and embrace that they really do have what it takes and they can succeed. And that can change the trajectory of somebody's life. And so that's one of the reasons that really drew me into a community college education. But like Miramar Dreamers as a support service, say a little bit more about that and what that's designed to do.
Well, it's first of all, it's staffed by people who understand the kinds of frustrations that students can have. Dreamers, of course, are undocumented or children of undocumented, and they might need legal advice or legal assistance. Many of them add to the fears that you just said. So we've already got the blown tire example out there. We've got the imposter syndrome is how I would capture what you were just saying, of I don't belong here. And now add to that, I'm not welcome in this society because, I'm not a citizen or whatever. There's a lot of resources in California, especially, that aren't necessarily available in other states. And there's always been a very close relationship, especially in San Diego, with Mexico. And so, folks that we have coming across the border for life necessities, dreaming about a different way of life, have a long history here. And so, it's a natural kind of a program here, but we have a lot of supports available through that to help with advice, encouragement, and get students in touch with some very real assistance that they need, whether it's monetary or otherwise. So as you both probably know, legal services is a great example. There's a lot of attorneys out there, immigration attorneys, who will work for pro bono. They'll do the work for free. And so we help get them in touch with the kinds of resources that they need. At the same time, we also build a sense of community. among these students so that they know that they're not alone, because that's another component for students too, is to know you're not alone in that journey. Going back, drifting a little bit from the Dreamers, but just the overall imposter syndrome. I love to share my own story, which is that in 9th grade, I was told I wasn't college material. So I have always carried that imposter syndrome with me. It wasn't until I got to a community college after trying real life on and finding how harsh that can be. I went to a community college and found out that I do have an aptitude for academics. And look where I am now. I would love to go back and find that high school counselor and say, look where I am now. You know, you can't label people, you know, and I love to tell that story, especially to incoming students, because I know there are so many of them sitting there thinking exactly what I did in my first days at a community college, first semesters for me, that I don't belong here. And at any given moment, someone's going to realize that and kick me out. You know, I didn't know that community colleges would never kick you out, you know, unless for some kind of behavioral issue or something like that. But it was a real eye opener for me, and it changed my life being accepted at a community college. And so I think, you know, helping students, the more that we can tell our own stories, a lot of folks who work at community colleges have similar kinds of experiences. And the more we communicate to students that whatever your background, whatever you've been through, whatever you're experiencing now, we understand that you feel like maybe this isn't for you and it's not set up well for you, but it is, and we'll help you get through. You know, we're here alongside you. Here, give me your hand. I'll pull you up, you know, and help you achieve what you're hoping to achieve. You get that message out there and you mean it. That's the key, you know, you're genuine about it. Students recognize that, you know, and they come to you. I don't know how many times, even in pandemic, you know, as a president who started this job during the pandemic, we're just now starting to reopen. We've had some, we had Indigenous Peoples festivities last week, and then we had the Filipino American celebration, all with food and music groups on campus here. No big crowds like we used to have, you know, but a lot of students here. And I have already built relationships with some students just because they're there and I'm there and we get to talking and we share our stories, and instantly there's a connection. And, you know, I know that those students, if they don't have any other connection, they do actually, but if I was their only connection, I know that's enough to help them.
You might be the only connection they have to the school at that point, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
you know, so I think that's really important, and it's a great example of great leadership and servant leadership. I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm going to kind of give you a curveball question. I like to do this with every guest. I'm going to ask each of you a question. Steve is my co-host, unrelated to higher ed, just to learn a little bit about both of you. You guys ready?
Sure.
Here we go. You should hear the game show music. You don't win any money, I'm sorry to say, guys. I'm going to ask you both. You can choose one answer. Question one, what's your entrance music? If there's going to be something playing on the radio, it's a radio loudspeaker, what's that? Your portable electronic speaker that you carry in your pocket. Every time you walk into a room, what would your song be? Or you can answer, what's your dream vacation? You can, Steve, we'll go with you first. Give our guest a little more time to prepare.
Sure. Okay. I think I'll go with the entrance music. How's that? Funny.
Let's
I was just thinking I heard a song today coming home after dropping my son off at school. So for me, it would be Fantasy by Earth, Wind and Fire.
Wow. Well done.
It was a song that when I was an undergrad at the University of Delaware, I was majoring in accounting, and I would listen to that to get psyched for my accounting exams.
Is it possible to get psyched for an accounting exam, Steve?
That is an oxymoron right there. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I used to listen to that, and it was a song that we would play at parties and things like that. And it's been, you know, the Dreamers and EdUp and everything. I'm learning more and more that being up in the balloon and seeing the big picture and trying to be outside of the box and redefining community when it comes to community college. I think, you know, it's all about fantasy, right? You live in a fantasy world, Steve. It's like, yep, that's the song.
That's good. I like that. All right, Wes, you get to choose song or dream vacation.
No, I'll do the song too. And for me, it'd be Bob Marley's Three Little Birds.
Oh my gosh, you guys are on fire.
It's one of my, you know, like life motto songs. The other one is Louis Armstrong doing It's a Wonderful, Wonderful World, which I sing to my 7-year-old every night still at bedtime. He and I sing
Nice.
together. But Three Little Birds, it's all about don't worry, don't worry, things work out. Listen, nobody can make more turns and changes in life than I have. And what I can tell you is you can roll with it, man. You can roll with it and come out right on top, So, put the first things first and stay focused on what's right in your life, and everything follows from that. So why get all worked up? Why worry about it?
I love asking these questions because when you ask these questions, what's your entrance music? It feels like it'd be completely unrelated to higher ed, but every single higher ed person connects it to higher education somehow. Well, how they talk to students, how they put it to their own life, which becomes how they motivate themselves and becomes how they motivate others. It's really interesting. That's why I ask it, because it seems like I just put in this random question. Not only does it humanize the folks that we talk to here on EdUp, which I think is unlike any other podcast out there, we kind of make this fun, but it's like, how do you take your outside influences, and always as a higher ed professional, you're always thinking about ways to embed them in what you do. And serving students is hard, guys. Serving students is very, very hard. It's taxing. And, I've transitioned to ask the question to you, Wes, about free community college. It's a well-discussed, and Steve, I'm sure you have an opinion on this too, well-discussed topic. Should it be free? Shouldn't it be free? My question is always this: if a student, because you have the San Diego Promise, this is why I'm asking you, because you have the program that's doing this, so you probably have data behind it. But I always ask the question. First of all, I love the idea of free anything. Free college is great, but do the students really value it if it's free? If they don't have any skin in the game at all? Is it too easy to leave to where free doesn't necessarily mean increased outcomes? You might have more in the front end, but you might have more outs, more ins and more outs, and not necessarily have a better outcomes. What do you think? What's your opinion? Wes, I'll go to you first, and then Steve, please add in.
Sure. Yeah. So, here's what I would say. Sometimes when I don't have the stats in front of me, and I don't want to reveal that, it's the great dodgeball, right?
That's okay. You know what? Every college president has to be a little political.
No, seriously, even if I did have the stats in front of me, I would still answer it the same way. And that is my own experience. When I went to community college, it was free. And I was highly motivated. And I was motivated as much by what I was coming from as what I might be going to. I mentioned that, I took a little stint between high school and college. And I tasted life out there, saw what it's like, and said, you know what, this isn't for me. I need to do something else. Have no idea what, but I know that pouring myself into this is the key to doing it. So I don't think making it free devalues it. That's, just my experience probably runs that response more than anything else. I know that there's arguments on both sides, but to be really honest with you, I have not seen any kind of study done, and there are studies out there that talk about that. I don't see any study that shows stats in a way that's compelling for me to say, oh, this is definitely a motivational factor or not. So I rely more on my own experience and what I hear from students as I interact with them. They want to achieve something, and they're willing to pay for it if that's what they need to do. But for some folks, the vast majority of those we serve, it's difficult to come up with the money to pay for college. And, you think about the price you pay just being in college, not being in a job that you could be in. There's already a sacrifice there. So you can probably guess I'm 100% behind free college, community college education. And I think that it's an investment from society into its own future. There was a study done some years ago, I think it was MIT, did a study for Massachusetts where they looked at what the payoff value was within the state. Those who achieved a bachelor's degree tended to put more than $800,000, this is 15 years ago, $800,000 back into the economy over their lifetime. You think about what a college education costs, and that would be a good return. Let's go with a high figure and say $60,000 investment to to put someone through a bachelor's degree for free is going to return 800,000 plus into the economy. I think that's a good investment. That's a good return. I don't know, Steve, you're the business guy. You tell me. I'm an English guy.
No pressure, no pressure.
Well, I'm a little torn on it, guys. I sense, like Joe does, that if you don't have any skin in the game, when the going gets tough, it's easy to just say, you know what, I'm out. It didn't cost me anything, and I can have an easy exit strategy. On the other hand, Wes, I hear what you're saying. About what I'm coming from and what's really motivating me to engage and give everything I can to this space of education. There's part of me that thinks we could do a loan forgiveness type of an arrangement where it would prevent people from just stopping out who say, look, I really don't want to be here anyway. I'm really not sure what I want to do, so I'm trying this. As soon as the going gets tough, they opt out. If there was some kind of a loan for those who need it, it's a loan, but when you graduate, there's a forgiveness plan in place. That might be some type of a net to bring in both. How do we make it as widely available as we can, and yet make it as life transformational as we can? And I think students, just like everybody in education, has to show up being ready to give something. And it's not just a receiving kind of paradigm. And if we had something like that, I know there's a college where we are here in Michigan downstate that is working on a free tuition plan through an endowment that they've established to offer free tuition, with the idea or the hope that once you graduate, you'll start to pay back or give to the program. It's not a mandate, but it's the idea that you graduated, you've had a great experience. Now, would you be willing to give, kind of a pay it forward type of a model that they've put in place? So, boy, it's certainly a great question. It's a contemporary question. It's a real question. I think it's going to shape what we're doing going forward. I don't know that there's a one size fits all model, which is pretty fun, to be able to see different colleges exploring different solutions for that problem, and then collectively how we could learn from each other in some type of synergistic fashion. I think there's real opportunities there.
I love your differing but similar perspectives. I learned a lot from you both there. It's interesting, right? These are the problems that we have to wrestle with. These are the problems of our time. Free college, value of a degree, big, you're right in the middle of that conversation because of the number of non-credit and professional training programs you have, degree programs that you have. There's a very, very big conversation about the anti-intellectualism, it's out there. It's for real. And a lot of people are buying it. And the question is, what is that going to do for the future of work? And are employers really not looking for people with degrees? I mean, it's easy to say, but in the end, it kind of feels like you might still have a little bit of a leg up if you have something behind you.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because in one of the major news agencies this morning, I saw there's an article about, employers saying, I don't care if you have a college degree or not. A lot of those models, if you really dig into them, you'll find that they're wanting to train people for their specific company. And I don't know, call me a cynic, but there it is. They say if someone says something's free, they're selling something. That's not always true, but there it is for me. What they're trying to do is they're trying to train people for that job and lock them in for that particular job. You have less mobility of your credentialing then. So if you work with this company or that company, and you want to leave, don't like the company, not treated well, not treated well, you're not gonna be able to do that as well if you're trained by that company for this particular job. It's not going to transfer to another company as easily. So I'm very skeptical of those kinds of models. And that's what I'm seeing most of the time out there, even with some of the partners that we work with now. They want to train folks for that particular job for their company, and it's not as transferable. So I think the greater good is, there's your great word, the greater good is served better when you have an unbiased or someone who's doing the training that doesn't have anything to gain from it necessarily. So
it's really interesting you say that, because I literally not too long ago. I interviewed, when this comes out, I don't know what order these come out in always, but I had the pleasure of interviewing the Senior Vice President of Learning and Leadership for Walmart. And she was talking about the same topic. And I thought we were talking about the battle for talent. This a real battle for talent. One way to be a part of that battle is to have such an amazing and huge scope that you're just giving to society, and you create evangelists that come in and out of your process, much like Walmart is doing. The other way is to lock somebody in, to give them the one specific skill you need where they can't take it anywhere else, and they're kind of with you. That's a really interesting point you made there, Wes, and it makes me think about if that entire argument is underpinned by the battle for talent somehow. Like, how do we keep the people we have? Oh, we're just going to give them this one thing, and they're not going to be able. I mean, I don't think those conversations really happen, but maybe they do. We're going to kind of give them this one thing, and they're going to do it for us, and we do it in a really specific way, and that's going to be where they're going to be.
Or even if they insert that you'll be able to move up, but you're going to have to do it within our company. We're going to give you plenty of opportunities to build your skill set and move up in the company. But still, at the end of the day, you're that employee.
Yeah, Wes, when I hear you say that, it makes me think, so is that just a different version of the industrial model of education, right? Instead of it being a factory assembly line as people are moving through education, it's, well, just come here, serve here, but guess what? You won't be able to move out of here.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And, it's just not a good caveat emptor, right? Let the buyer beware, or let the student beware in this case, because they may not be buying it. But yeah, I think if we can create, I feel like the future is moving towards what does it mean to be human? That's what I sense is really stirring in our nation, that education is going to shift from a talent or from a conveyor of degree to a talent development agency mindset. And that's going to be a real win for students. It's going to be a real win for colleges that are able to make that shift. It's actually going to be a real win for employers too, because the people that show up and knock on their door will show up saying, I'm here to serve, right? I'm really here to serve. And I think your company or your organization might be a great place of service, and it fits who I am. As I've kind of developed my own talent, as education has helped with that. So that's one of the things I see kind of peeking around the corner as coming down the pike.
Yeah, and that might be the next great showdown too. Notice how much greatness I'm building in here.
So much greatness.
This is Muhammad Ali episode.
That's right. That's it. Was it float like a butterfly, sting like a bee?
Yeah, you got the butterfly dreamers.
But the next great showdown, if that were to be the case, Steve, then you're going to have, an entire population saying it's what's really valuable is being human, and this is what I bring to the table, versus the Wall Street model of the economic model that we have, which is driven by what big companies, big box stores, and otherwise are there for, is to build the profit. And that ultimately goes to the shareholders. That's not
access denied.
That's not the greater. Yeah, exactly. It's not the greater good, if you will, as traditionally defined.
It goes right back to your economic package idea.
You guys, I'm just going to get off the microphone and let you guys go to town here at this point. I think you guys could be on all day long talking about this speculation, if you will, which I love. I love listening to you both talk. Alas, we are close to out of time. So, Steve, I'm going to let you ask any final questions you have to Wes before I give him his final 2 questions of this EdUp Experience episode.
So, Wes, talk to a student who is, regardless of age, might hear this episode and is thinking, I really don't know that I have what it takes to be successful. How would you speak into that student's life? What would you say to them? And they're thinking about maybe coming to a community college, even your community college. What would you say to that student?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is, why do you say that? I want to know where they're coming from before I try to give them a response. I know what my response is going to be. But first 2 things. One, I want them to know that I'm hearing them, and that I know what their experience is before I respond. And the reason why I say that I know what my response would be, because whatever the experience is that gets them to that point, I know that they can succeed, and I know that they have the tools to do that. You know, even in my own field in English, your worst person with grammar is really only missing one key piece of knowledge of 8 or 12. 8, frankly. In grammar, it's 8. But, you know, and once you get them to understand, say, independent clauses, then that takes care of a whole host of other issues. So I know that that's the case with each student. They already have demonstrated that they have what it takes by getting to where they are. And so it's more of a matter of how can we meet you where you are and help you be successful, because that's what we're here for. And Steve, you know this as well as I do, and you probably do too, Joe, but maybe your listeners don't. Higher ed is shifting from the, you know, is a student college ready to is a college student ready. And that's really what it focuses on, is we need to focus more on our student needs and meeting those. So absolutely, I would tell them, you do have what it takes. Let me help you figure out how you utilize what you have to be successful in this environment.
Love it.
I love that thought, is a college student ready. I love that phrase.
Well, Wes, your final 2 questions of the episode here. Number 1, what did we miss about San Diego Miramar College that you wanted to say today? Steve didn't ask you. I prepped him, but he just totally failed to ask you a question. What did he need to cover today that you didn't get to say? Anything you want to plug at all? And then number 2, what is the future of higher education going to look like?
Yeah, you know, about Miramar, this is where you're saying, you know, you can make a business plug for your college or something like that. Is that
like, yeah?
You know, like any community college, I wouldn't just say Miramar. Certainly my sister institutions here in San Diego, but I would say across the nation, community colleges are the best kept secret. And, you know, I've heard that from, I've spoken to many universities that have shared with me that students who transferred from my community college to their university for their last 2 years perform better in the last 2 years of the bachelor's program than their own students who started there. That's a powerful message. And then they tell us, please don't share that, by the way.
Yeah, you can't, they don't want you to share that. Come on.
No, but I'm being straight up with you. I have been told that by 3 different universities. So yeah, your community college is your best resource, and you have fantastic faculty, and you have absolutely dedicated people there who are not interested in research or bringing in grant dollars or whatever. They're there for you. And so that's what I would say. That's the sales pitch. And I do it for all my brother and sister institutions out there. And then the future of higher education, I think we've touched on that a bit. Don't know exactly what it is, but it's not going to be an assembly line. And it's going to be a step in the right direction of understanding that human beings are ultimately human beings. You know, I think it was Winston Churchill that said that art is what we live for, you know, and those are not necessarily utilitarian things. But how many of us really go to those utilitarian things to recharge our batteries? Very few. Most of us have something that's much more important to us than the job or whatever. And I think the future will tap into that.
Love it. Well, I'll tell you this, since my sound effects weren't working, I'm going to say my sound effects were working, and since I failed to plug in my equipment at the beginning of this episode, I'm going to replay the sounds that I introduced you guys with as an outro. And so we're going to thank you, Wes, for coming on. But I want to first thank my co-host today. Here he is. He's a faculty member at Northwestern Michigan College, Steve Rice. Steve, thank you so much for co-hosting with me today.
That was great, Joe. Thanks for the background music. Yeah, not exactly fantasy, but you know.
I was going to do this, but this one just felt so much better. Didn't it feel good to you?
Yeah.
Good. And Wes, Dr. Wesley Lundburg, president of San Diego Miramar College. It is an absolute honor to know you and to have had you on the EdUp Experience today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here and fun. So thank you for that too.
Well, good. Imagine if I had my equipment working the whole time. Ladies and gentlemen, you just EdUp'd.
Hi, I'm Kristen Gubser from Gateway Community College in Phoenix. Gateway is a founding college partner of Unmuddle. In today's competitive higher ed landscape, Unmuddle is a critical tool for working learners and employers to dynamically and flexibly build the workforce pipeline of the future. By partnering with community colleges, Unmuddle allows for training to happen anytime, anywhere. One competitive advantage of Unmuddle is the opportunity to take non-credit training and convert it to college credit when needed to support advancement in the workplace. With Unmuddle, we bring college to you.